Here's what we got. I'm so glad to be back home. I ain't gonna lie to you. It's been fun to watch our staff be a part of what's happening here. But I did have a moment this morning that was very fun. It was one of those moments where I think you look back and you say those moments mean a lot when somebody just hands you a little token gift, and it's gifts that. I don't really care much for elaborate gifts and all this stuff. I like gifts that really are part of my personality, all right? And so somebody said to me this morning, they said, we were out of town a few weeks ago, and we thought about you. And if you know me, I'm a little bit sarcastic. Hopefully not too sarcastic, but I like to laugh at things that some people don't laugh at. And one of the things that we have a saying in our home, as I'll talk more about my kids in a few moments, but when my kids whine or get dramatic, we have a saying in my home, and so they handed me this morning, and it simply says, "Suck it up, Buttercup." And so if you ever get mad, I'm going to leave this on the stage. If you ever get mad at me, you just look over here and realize you can suck it up, Buttercup. And so that's my new spanking spoon, by the way. And so any of you dads in here ever felt like a failure as a father? Come on, raise your hand. The rest of y'all lying like a fool. And so this week, true story, any of y'all send your kids to the First Baptist Church down the road, their VBS? Anybody? Yeah, my kid went too. And so I met the pastor there this week. It's really cool. We're doing lunch, all that stuff. But reason we don't, people say, y'all do VBS? We're like, no, man, there's enough people to give y'all kids free child care throughout this summer. We don't need to do one. And so I ain't pulling our volunteers for that. So we got a great one right up the street. We take all our kids there. I saw half of y'all there. But I think it was Wednesday, I go to pick up my kid. Who's 6, he's going the first time by himself because his older brothers moved to student ministry and all that stuff. And if you don't know my kid, he's special in a very, and I mean that in a very unique way. Like, he has a really unique personality. He's special because he's my kid. Obviously, all of our kids think our kids are special, but there's something about this kid that just brightens up. And it doesn't appear to have a mean bone in his body. I know he does because he's probably secretive about it. But he's just so fun-loving, and everything in life is a joke to him. So at VBS this week, keep in mind, I know half the people there, they all know that's the Pastor at Relevant's kid, and they're doing the competitions where you win certain things and they get stickers on the wall and they keep a running total all week. Well, the yellow team apparently got out to a start on the first day, and they're all like, ooh, sucker, all that kind of stuff. Well, my kid was on the orange team, and so the orange team the next day just dominated, and so they were up by a point or two the next day. Well, then on Wednesday, I go in to pick up my kid, and the yellow team is winning everything that day. And they are literally like, what now? I mean, they're all standing up, and it's about to turn into a brawl at VBS, not really. But, and so they're all like, what now? And all the other kids are just staring at them like, whatever. My kid proceeds to stand up, turn around, and bend over and start going, shake my booty in your face, shake my booty. To which I'm like, Julie, why do you keep teaching our kids these things? I don't know where he even learned that. But he don't care. He's just, everything's a joke to him. But I'm sitting there going, oh my God, everybody's like, people are going, look at that kid. And I'm like, so I made Brandon go pick him up and to bring him out. And no, I didn't do that. And so it's just one of those things, man. I just think being a dad is tough in our culture. But beyond that, being a man is a very difficult thing in our culture today. And I don't mean it difficult in the sense of responsibility. I mean difficult because the enemy has a target on your back. It's interesting to me because 95% of men who follow Jesus, the rest of their family follow Jesus. It's amazing when a man comes to church and makes Jesus center life, the percentages of the children and the wife following Christ are so much greater. Because God intended for the man to be a leader in this culture, to be a leader in their home, to be a leader to their children. And so whether you're 18 or you're 15, you're a grown man, you're failed as a father, you have kids, you don't have kids, or even ladies, today I think is going to apply to you. We kicked off this series 3 weeks ago, and the whole premise behind Sunday in the South is this, of understanding Bible stories from a different perspective. Some of the greatest stories of the Bible that we learned as children, if you grew up in church. If you didn't, you may have heard some of these stories at the very least. And we started with creation. And we said the whole reason that we have a Bible in the beginning is because of man's sin, and God said, I'm going to write you all that you need to understand in the scriptures of my pursuit of you through Christ. Without sin, there's no need for a Bible. But because of sin, now we understand throughout the Genesis all the way to Revelation, there's a scarlet thread of Jesus' blood that is saying, I'm coming after you because I want to redeem humanity back to myself. I want you to have a relationship with me. That's the whole intent of the scriptures. And so as we've looked at these stories, we've asked ourselves, how do these stories tie into the plan of redemption for humanity? For God restoring humanity back to him after sin entered the world. And so in week 2, Jamie came and spoke to you specifically about Noah and Noah's continued obedience and how God always has a small group of people that he uses to make sure throughout history he's always had at least a small remnant or small group of people that he has used because of their obedience to bring forth Jesus' life into this world, his death, and ultimately his burial and resurrection. And so she talked about how the importance of our life and our obedience will impact how we play a part in the redemptive story or the narrative of Christ in our community. So Mark came back last week and he talked about a man by the name of Moses. Now before I need to clarify a couple of comments that Mark made last week. You knew this was coming if you were here. First of all, Mark is so old now that he failed to realize there are 4 staff members older than me, but for some reason he's having a hard time keeping the facts straight in his mind. Secondly, he took a shot at our millennials, which I love. I don't know why he would take a shot at our millennials. And he said, it's great that we have all those young ones, but now you're here for some old ones. And then he talked about a rap battle that we had, that he failed to mention to you that the millennials wrote 80% of his rap lines and then had to work with him to get him in pocket to deliver those lines, okay? Because he was so bad at the beginning, they're like, you can't do that. That's awful. And so he did win fair and square. I will tell you, I absolutely botched my last line, but that's okay. If you're not a part of the dream team, you didn't get to see it. And so join and serve, and you can watch us make fools of ourselves. So Mark shared with you last week about Moses and the redemptive story of Christ through the children of Israel. And how the children of Israel come to this, after their captivity and slavery, they come to this mountain and God gives them the 10 Commandments. It is not a bunch of rules and guidelines, but it is to say to you, you are my chosen people because Jesus is coming through your bloodline. And I want you to understand, because we are in relationship, here are some guidelines that are going to help you navigate and honor me in our relationship with one another. And so he talked to you about the 10 Commandments being God's pursuit of us, not just a bunch of rules that we follow. Now, I want to rewind back a few chapters in Genesis. Before we get to the delivery of the children of Israel, I want us to go back in time a little bit because I think if this message would have been preached last week, first of all, it wasn't Father's Day, so it didn't fit. Second of all, if you don't have the context of what we talked about last week, you'll still understand it, you'll still grasp some things, but I think the context of the children of Israel last week only make today's message more impactful. So, with that in mind, we're going to talk specifically about appetites today. Now, favorite food, men, anything meat related. I can eat chicken wings, I can eat steak, and I can eat ribs, and you can keep everything else, right? Come on, somebody, anybody? See, some of y'all came today for the biscuits and gravy, and then you're gonna go home and you're gonna fire up the grill and you're gonna eat all day. And so for me, I love food, man. We love food. We're all on the same page. And but I want to talk to you deeper than just a hunger appetite. I want to talk to you about your spiritual and your emotional appetites that we have in life. But before we do, I need to be honest and upfront about something. This message is not my own message, all right? There's so much good content out there that sometimes we'll take a few thoughts and quotes and this from books and messages, but I heard this message in, I think, 2009 or 2010 at a conference. And it so helped me understand some things about how we are wired as humans and our desires in life that it just, man, there were some things that I just wrote down. I couldn't stop taking notes. Well, 2 years later, I was at a church in South Carolina, and I heard the pastor stand up and say basically what I'm telling you. I heard this message at a conference, and it so impacted me that I'm going to preach it to you today. So he preached it, and I was like, man, this is so good. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to share it with you today, because as a man, this grasped me. This made me understand what it meant to be a man, a husband, a father, a follower of Jesus. It's not just to men. Ladies, we're all going to be able to connect. If you're a teenager, you're a student, you're a young adult, you will grasp this context. So write this down if you want to, or here's the premise that we're working from, is that we all carry internal tensions inside of us because of our appetites. Let's start with hunger, just because that's the one everybody thinks when they think appetite. The internal tension, it's January. What are you going to do? You're going to make a New Year's resolution. We're going to lose weight. Well, January 10th, there's chocolate cake on the table. There's the tension inside of you, right? Because you want it. That's the simplest way I can put it. But it's so much bigger than just cake or a diet or some kind of hunger. Here's what I know, though, about appetites, is appetites understand only one word, and that is more. More. And there's all different kinds of appetites, men. You'll understand this. There's food. There's sex. There's food. There's basically food and sex if you're a man, right? And so, but no, in all seriousness, let's just kind of run down a list of other appetites that people deal with. There's security. Don't we desire to be safe and secure and let our insecurities die? No matter how many people love us, we want everybody to love us and embrace us. We need that security in our life. Love. We want to be loved. We want to be respected. And it doesn't matter how much respect you have. It's the one person who disrespects you that matters to you, right? We want success. We want money and stuff. We have an appetite for these things. We have an appetite for fame. We have an appetite for sex, like I said, an appetite for food, and the list can continue to go on and on. But every one of these things that I just listed are not bad. Even fame, you say, why would you want fame? Well, listen, I don't necessarily think the idea of wanting a platform or wanting to be heard and have a platform to speak the gospel and change, that's not bad. Now, when it turns to internal fame for self-recognition, that's a different issue. But there are appetites that we have that if we're not careful, though, they will consume us and control us. So what I want us to do is give you a couple thoughts about appetites. Then I want to look at a story in the scriptures of two brothers by the name of Jacob and Esau. And here are the three thoughts that I want to give you leading into that. The first one is this. God created our appetites, and sin distorted them. God created our appetites, and sin distorted them. So Genesis chapter 1, let's go back to the hunger idea. God says, I've created this garden. I've given you everything you want in this garden. You have food aplenty. You can eat. You can drink of anything in this garden except for one tree. Don't eat of that one tree. God gave them an appetite for all of that. God gave Adam an appetite, a desire for his wife, Eve. God gave them an appetite to reproduce and multiply and dominion over the earth. God gave them that. The problem is sin distorted it. He said, don't eat of that one tree. But they ate of that one tree, and now sin has had its impact on humanity ever since. So God created appetites, sin distorted them. Here's the second thought. Appetites are never fully and finally satisfied. Appetites are never fully and finally satisfied. Anybody in here ever been to Buckner's? Like if you're not from here, you don't understand Buckner's. If you never, it's an experience you must experience at some point on this side of heaven. Okay, it's where the fried chicken just comes around every 2 minutes and you grab another one. And here's the thing about Buckner's is you eat until you wear out the bearings on that table, won't you? You're so, man, we don't need no more chicken. We need you to grease these bearings. You will eat and you'll be like, oh, you'll walk out of there every single time going, I can't eat another bite. I'm not eating the rest of the day. 3 hours later, you're standing at the fridge going, I'm hungry. Anybody ever been there? Or is it just me? Don't judge me. You're like, I can't eat nothing. We're not eating. And then you say, I'm kind of hungry later. Because here's the thing about appetites. They're temporarily satisfied, but they're never fully and finally satisfied. This is not just true of food. Do you understand that we go through life thinking if we could just get more money, a bigger house, a better neighborhood, if we could just get a better job, if we could just get this or get that, we think something in life will finally satisfy. That is not going, nothing, no one thing or group of things will ever fully and finally satisfy you. Here's the other thing. We think sometimes if we can just get that one person, oh my gosh, it's my dream guy. She's hot, you know. See, our men, we have this desire in life. We want people to look at us and be like, how'd you get her, right? Don't we? Come on. Like we want people to, like, we want to be envy. We think somehow if we can get this relationship, but no person, no thing will ever fully satisfy you. Never. The only thing that satisfies our soul is finding contentment in who we are in Christ. That's it. And so then, here's what I want you to hear. No money, no amount of money. I'm not saying money's bad. I think you ought to get all you possibly can and help as many people as you can with it. And be generous and love your church and love your community. I think that's great. I actually believe entrepreneurs and philanthropists are great when they make a difference. There's nothing wrong with desiring money for the right reasons. I think no amount of fame is going to satisfy your soul. No amount, young people, young adults, students, no amount of followers or double taps, no amount of friends or likes are going to satisfy your soul. No amount of touchdowns or wins in your 10-year-old baseball or your high school career are going to satisfy your soul. Because appetites are never fully and finally satisfied. Have you watched the contract negotiations of the Falcons this year? Want more? And I want it now. And I'm supporting my Falcons, but I'm mad about it. Because we always want more, don't we? Here's the third one. Your appetite always whispers now and never later. Always whispers now and never later. Here's a principle we're going to work from as we jump into Jacob and Esau. Your ability or my ability or inability to manage our appetites will determine the direction of our lives. It will. I don't mean it might. I don't mean it'll have an impact. I mean it will directly determine the direction of your life. And so we have 4 house rules in our home. I won't go over all 4 of them. Some of you got 88 and you wonder why your kids can't obey them because they can't remember them all. We got 4. And one of the most important of them, because they're all character, they're heart issues in our home, we discipline the heart, not the behavior. We discipline the heart because we want to change the heart and the behavior changes. And one of our rules is you must have self-control. What are we trying to teach our kids? Manage your appetites, control your manage them, because if you don't, they will control you. And if you don't, it will determine the quality and the direction of your life. I have friends in ministry. I've seen pastors whom I looked up to that have fallen away from the influence and the families that God has given them, not because of their theology or because they're lazy, but it was because they failed to manage the appetite. I've seen fathers, Christians and husbands and even moms walk away from their families, walk away from the calling of God in their life, not because they're busy or crazy, but because they can't manage their appetites. And some of you know this because your parents were some of them. You wonder why your dad walked out because he had an alcohol addiction. It was because he didn't learn to manage his appetite. Or one of your spouses cheated on your parents cheated on their spouse for some other person because they didn't learn to manage their appetites. And some of the appetites got so out of control and they got so caught up in them that then they did things to you and harmed you and put you in compromising situations as a child. Why? Because the appetite determined the direction of their life. And here's the problem. Many times it leaves shrapnel all in the background. And so then we come to the story of Jacob and Esau. I don't know how many of you know this story. If you learned it on a flannel graph in church when you were a kid in Sunday school, which you go back and listen to how I learned stories and I didn't understand who was who. But I want to give you some background into who Jacob and who Esau are. They are 2 brothers. Esau is the older of the 2 brothers. They are the sons of Isaac. All right? Now, this story is kind of a crux or a precipice in the narrative of the scriptures of God's redemption plan for humanity, of bringing humanity back to him, because the bloodline of Christ is going to flow through this family. But it's interesting here that in this particular passage, you'll see how the bloodline of Christ shifts because of one man's decision. If you're watching online, I hope you're grasping this. If you're a man, if you're a woman, if you're a teenager and you're watching online, stay with me throughout this process. And as you sit there today and watch, as you sit in our auditorium today and you listen, I want you to just think through how these things apply to the decisions that you and I have every single day of our lives. Genesis chapter number 25, beginning of verse number 29. It says, "Now Jacob cooked some stew. And when Esau came in from the open fields, he was famished." Now, let's stop right here. These brothers could not be more different. I've learned this in my kids. Your first kid is usually different from your second kid. And so these 2 brothers, Esau is a man's man. He is out in the field. He is hunting. He is killing stuff. He's wrestling crocodiles and killing bears and bringing stuff in for Jacob to cook in his skinny jeans. That's the way it happens, all right? And so at the end of the day, we have a cooking machine. And nothing wrong with that. Find your gifts and flow in your gifts. I don't care about that. But you have 2 totally different types of people here. And both are needed. But they could not be more different. And so Esau is out and he comes and he says, "I am famished." So Esau said to Jacob, "Feed me some of that red stuff, that stew you're making." "Yes, this red stuff because I'm starving." Your kids ever just ate a whole bag of potato chips? 20 minutes later, "Dad, I'm starving." Let me show you a picture on Google of a kid in Africa who ain't got no food, right? Like, you're like, you don't know what starving is. Then it says here, the text wants us to know this is why he was also called Edom, because Edom literally means red. And so the descendants of Esau, because of this, would be known as the Edomites throughout history. This is interesting because as you'll see at the end, it would have been a different lineage and a different descendant had he not done what he does in this story. So let's pause for a second. My 11-year-old and my 6-year-old are different. But one thing I have learned is that the older brother rarely needs anything from the younger brother, right? It's usually the younger brother that always wants or desires or needs the older brother's attention, the older brother's stuff. Listen, my 11-year-old is not asking my 6-year-old, can I ride your bike? Yesterday at the baseball field, my 6-year-old is over there jumping on the 12-year-old's, 11 and 12-year-old's back, and they're wrestling with him. My 11-year-old is not jumping on a 6-year-old's back. Like, it would be weird if my 11-year-old's like, can I play with your friends? No, that's weird. But my 6-year-old's like, Jace, can I play with your friends? Of course, because the younger brother always looks to the old, most likely. But there are those occasions where the older brother will say, I don't know, I just need something from my younger. My oldest will say, Trey, you want to play Minecraft? And Trey will be like, I don't know, what are you going to do with me? He's smart. And if a younger brother gets it, he will capitalize on these opportunities, won't he? So Trey is a processor, and he's always looking to one up. And Jace will say, will you play Minecraft with me? And he's like, or play whatever with me? And he's like, for $100. All right, brother, that's expensive time, okay? He say, Trey, you're crazy. He said, well, then if you'll do this, and this with me, I'll do it with you. And then Trey's like, I'm not doing all that. And then Trey will be like, well, just give me $1. I'm getting something out of this, right? So we just start, though, at the most extreme, $100. He don't even know how to count to 100 yet. He's still 6. Now he does, okay? And so, like, he's like, $100. He just wants one of those crisp $100 bills. And Jason's like the saver. He's like always stuffing money in his bag and hiding it in his room. And so, like, he's the saver. Trey wants the $100 so we can go on a trip to Walmart and he can buy something. That's why he wants it. But they're so different. But ever so often, the older brother will come to the younger brother and desire something. And the younger brother, if he's smart, will take him to the bank. This is what's happened. Esau comes to Jacob, and he is hungry. The problem is, in this culture, there's something known as a birthright. And the birthright was simply this. The oldest son was in line and entitled to the birthright in the Jewish culture. And with the birthright, Esau, being the oldest son, would have gotten the following things. A double portion of anything else any of the other children in the house would have gotten. And here's the problem. With Isaac, this had amassed lots of wealth. This was a lot of money and resources and finances that Esau was entitled to, just by being the oldest. The second thing that the birthright had was when your parents died, if you were the oldest boy in the family, you were given authority over the family, which means you became the patriarch. You became the patriarch in the family, and you then had authority to exercise decisions, and if decisions had to be made, it came to you. So you were given authority, you were given finances, and in a spiritual sense, that culture believed that the oldest is where the blessing flowed through. And as you'll see in the story, that was so true that God would choose the oldest many times to show his blessings through that oldest, and many times the bloodline of Christ. So the older brother never needs anything from the younger brother. But in this moment, he comes and he says, I'm famished. Can I have some of what you have? And listen to how the story goes. But Jacob replied, first, sell me your birthright. Look, said Esau, I'm about to die. What use is the birthright to me? Let's stop for a second. Here, wouldn't the logical question be, well, sell me your birthright, how much are you going to give me for it, right? But that's not what he does. He is so caught up in the drama and the situation that what he does is he goes immediately to what he is focused on at the time, and that is his appetite. The drama. I'm about to die. Bro, you just walked in here on your own 2 feet. You were just out hunting. I know you're hungry, but you're not about to die. Anybody got one of those dramatic kids? That's why I got the suck it up buttercup thing over there. You're like, you're fine, dude. Get it over. This is a ridiculous proposition. Who in their right mind would consider giving up the birthright, the financial implications, all of the blessings and all of the authority that comes to, who in their right mind would consider giving up what is temporary and momentary for which could be eternal? Who would do that? Here's my proposal to you is that you might and I might. It just depends on what's in that bowl of stew. This is what men have done in our culture for far too long. And this is why the family is crumbling many times, because men have traded their purpose and their passions for God for temporary pleasures and passions that have destroyed their families. You and I might do it, because here's why. Our appetites are powerful, and they are never fully and finally satisfied. He says, I'm about to die. He overstates the point, doesn't he? Esau says, what good is this birthright to me? Really? How can he possibly say that? Well, here's how. Because psychologists have studied this. There's a chemical change in your brain that happens when you have an appetite, or you desire something so much at this moment that you begin to think unclearly because it tricks you in your brain. There are two things. You may want to write these down and do your own research on them. There's something called impact bias. Impact bias simply states this. It means this, that it takes a simple appetite or desire and magnifies it out of proportion. It's where your brain lies to you. This is why you have what we call buyer's remorse. Yeah, you go to shop for that car, and you know how much money you have to spend, but you get baited into $20,000 more in 7 years worth of payments. Because you're not thinking clearly at the time. You go, okay, I got to have it. Well, I mean, everybody has a new car. And 7 years later, you're going, oh my God, please. 7 hours later, you're like, what do we do? I just drove it off the parking lot, and it's 30% less than what I drove it off of there as. It's called buyer's. But why? Because the impact bias. I need it, and I need it now. Here's the second thing. Focalism. This changed my life when I heard this message 8 years ago. Focalism focuses your mind on one thing and blurs out everything else. Your mind is a powerful thing. And you have the ability to focus on something so narrow that you are unaware of the things around you. This is why your kids don't hear you half the time. And you're like, Jace! Huh? Did you not hear me the 14 times? Because he's so focused on what matters to him at that moment. This is why your husband don't hear you half the time too, ladies. I'm just being honest. Because we just like narrow minds, like one thing at a time, please. Your mind is a powerful thing. This is also why people get so focused on, oh, I want it, and I can't see all of the things around me that it's going to impact along the way. And so listen to how the story continues. But Jacob said, swear an oath to me now. So Esau swore an oath to him and sold his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of stew. Everybody in this room is like, that's dumb. Yeah, because you're on the outside looking in. I wonder if we could look into your life, or you could look into my life. I mean, we'd be like, you're dumb. We've all made those dumb decisions, haven't we? So here's where I wish I could enter the story. Esau, hey, psst. I'm from the future. Hence the white shoes. I'm from the future, but I want to tell you something that you can't see right now. Young people, listen to me. Dads, listen to me. God wants to do something in and through you that you can't even imagine, Esau. Hey, focus with me. Quit looking at all things around. I know I look a little different, but I'm from thousands of years down the road. But I want to tell you the significance of this decision you're about to make. You understand that at the crux of this transaction is your future. And if you don't trade your birthright for this bowl of stew, let me tell you how the future unfolds. You know, in a few hundred years, first of all, you'll have 12 kids, and they'll be the 12 tribes of Judah. You'll find the 12 tribes of Israel, and now those 12 children will be millions of people, and they will be caught in slavery for some 400 years. This is what Mark talked about a little bit last week, right? And ultimately, eventually, God will come down on a mountain and He'll reveal the 10 Commandments to your people, telling you, I love you and I've pursued your people. You'll be the children of God, and through your bloodline will come Christ. Your kids will be, your children, the Israelites will be, God's chosen people will come through your bloodline, Esau, and you'll be in slavery for some 400 years. But, God will call a man by the name of Moses. I know it's a weird name. Just stay with me. Listen to me. Don't get sidetracked. Esau, look at me. If you don't make this transaction, there'll be a moment in time where God appears to Moses in a burning bush. And He says to Moses, I want you to go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go. And Moses will be the man that's called to go and free your children, the Israelites, out of slavery. And he said, Esau, but listen, when Moses talks to God, he's going to ask God, who do I tell him sent me? And God's going to say, I don't know, tell him I am sent you. I am who? Listen to how God will introduce Himself to Moses if you don't make this transaction. I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. God will introduce Himself by name as the God of Abraham, your father Isaac, and you, Esau. And then thousands of years later, there'll be a man by the name of Matthew. He'll be a follower of Jesus. He'll be a tax collector. I know you don't understand taxes because it's weird and it'll all change. Just go with me. Just stay with me. He'll write this little letter. Really, it's kind of a book. It's not really a book, but it'll be in the Bible. And I know you don't understand because it's thousands of years from now. But in his introduction to the story of Jesus, he will write these words. Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Esau. And through Esau came Jesus. But, and this is how the story unfolds, if you make this transaction, God won't introduce Himself to Moses as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Esau. He will say, you tell him I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and your little brother Jacob. And Matthew won't say Abraham was the father of Isaac and Isaac was the father of Esau and through Esau came Jesus. No, Matthew will write Abraham was the father of Isaac. Isaac was the father of Jacob. And through Jacob came Jesus. Do you really want this temporary, momentary pleasure and miss the call of God on your life? Because you can't see straight right now. But how many of you know we can't enter into the story, can we? I don't want your children to wish they could have entered your story, men, and said, if you hadn't done that. I don't want your legacy a couple hundred years from now to be like, oh, remember our great-grandfather? No. I don't want you to sell your potential, your purpose, and your calling for temporary pleasures. Here's how it ends. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and lentil stew. Esau ate and drank. Then he got up and went out. This line kills me. So Esau despised his birthright. Despised it. You know why he despised it? I believe. Because the stew was gone. And the juice was gone. And now what did he have? Nothing. When that momentary, the Bible says sin is pleasurable for a season. And I bet that stew was good the first few bites. But then when he understood the impact bias and the focalism that led him to make that decision, there was a little bit of regret and remorse. History records that the bloodline of Jesus would come through Jacob, and the Edomites would be bitter with the Israelites for thousands of years because of one man's decision. Now, write this down. There are some opportunities you should never take because they will take you away from your calling. I challenge you this week to write this down on a piece of paper and then write your story. 10 years from now, ... What do I want my life to look like with God, with my marriage, with my kids, with my church, with my friends, with my colleges, with my high school? What do you want your life to look like? This will cause you to have to reframe your appetites in light of a bigger picture. We do this all the time with our church and our vision in our church. We know where we're going, and so we can't get caught up in all these temporary opportunities. People come to us all the time and say, hey, can we do this? Can we do it? No, because we're going there. We got a vision that we're staying focused on. And in doing so, after you write that out, ask yourself, and you may have multiple answers to this question. What is your bowl of stew? What is it? What is that thing that if nobody knew, if nobody saw, if you thought you could get away with, or maybe the thing that you're getting away with right now and you don't understand the eternal consequences of it or the long-term what is it? Some of you need to bring it to light with someone around you. You need to get involved in the counseling situation center we have here. You need to get involved in maybe the Hurts, Habits, and Hang-Ups program. There are opportunities you need to get celebrated. Whatever it is, we have paved the way for you to find healing. Not because we want to just go around going, what's everybody's problem? No, we all got problems, y'all. That's why we're in this series, because we all screwed it up. We want you to be whole, and we don't want you to look back and go, man, I jacked my life up even more because I didn't make the right decision. So then, one more thought, and then we'll be done. When you talk yourself into something, you're also talking yourself out of a God-given, specific future. So I rationalized, well, I needed, I wanted, I desired. Well, that's not a big deal. God will understand. Don't judge me. What are you leaving on the table that's so much better that God has for you? And what is true of Esau is also true of you. What is true of Esau is also true of me. And that is simply this, that you and I have no idea what God wants to accomplish through you and in you. Through your life, through your children, through your grandchildren. What if the decisions you make now impact people 200 and 300 years from now? You don't have a clue. I don't have a clue. So we got to reframe our thinking and then refrain from our appetites. Because if we don't, we will give everything one day to go back to that moment and make the right decision. It doesn't mean we'll be honest with ourselves and try to fix it, because what we do is we go into hiding usually, don't we? You can't go back and change the decision, but you can be honest and find wholeness and healing from where you're at this moment. But let's stop the bleeding, dads, men, now. Let's be that generation of men that says something happened around the 2020 mark that changed the course of history. It's because men began to rise up and step into their calling rather than temporary pleasures. And let's change the world. I'm going to ask every man, every young man, every teenage boy in this room, would you stand to your feet? It doesn't matter whether you're a father or not. I want you to stand to your feet all across this room. You say, I come to church today, my wife drugged me here, now you make me stand up. Because I believe in you, bro. And you need to know that. First of all, God, gotta watch what I say here. I've been said something so passionate. Look at all the dadgum men standing up, y'all. How cool is this? You could be anywhere today, but you're in church. I've been to churches where you say, if you look like a man, would you stand up? If you got any facial hair at all, because there's no men there. Thank God for a church with men who will bring their kids to church and be here with their wives. That's what changes the world. Somebody get a picture of this. Somebody, I don't care, take out your phones. Somebody go to the back and get a picture of all the doggone men standing up in this room. This is powerful stuff, man. Do you know how many churches across America would die to have men who would be here and be a part of something bigger than themselves? So let's close our eyes right now and let's commit ourselves, men, to say, God, we're going to passionately pursue you and not pursue our own desires and pleasures. Father, I pray right now for every man, every young man, every teenage boy in this room, God, that we would be a man like David was after your own heart. We can be a man's man and a dude's dude, but still love you because, Jesus, you understood. Your word tells us what it was like to live here on this earth. That's why you came, so that you could sympathize with our weaknesses and understand us. And you were tempted in every way, just as we are, yet your word says you were without sin. God, I pray we would model our desires after you and our lives after you, and we wouldn't trade something for momentary or temporary pleasure. Let the men of this church and this community rise up, lead their families, lead their wives, lead their children, and help change the world. And if there's some tension in the home, there's some tension in relationships, today I pray dad would come clean and say, I've got to do better. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to my wife. I'm sorry to my kids. But with your help, with the church's help, and with the small group's help, and with the counseling help, or whatever it is, we're going to make this right so that we can step into our calling and be all you've called us to be. Father, thank you for every man in this room. It's in Jesus' name we pray. And everybody said, amen. Come on, as they're seated, ladies, give them one more big round of applause.